It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. And in studio with us for the second time today is Pastor Chuck Baldwin, who is one of the leading liberty constitutionalists in the country. In fact, when MIAC and Homeland Security came out with reports 4 years ago demonizing people, they said were dangerous extremist leaders, it was Ron Paul and it was Chuck Baldwin. Now, I've been listed in many of the other reports, but I was kind of upset that I was not listed as horrible and evil by them, because the Southern Poverty Law Center, who basically helps write those reports, and the ADL are really wicked organizations. In fact, I'm going to cover it more tomorrow, but they put out a big national story. It's all over the place that I said the tornado in Oklahoma City was the government. And they'll only report on it more now that I'm debunking them, because they think it's getting to me. No, actually, it's getting to them. It's discrediting them, because my audience is bigger than their audience. They just have bigger, fancier studios, like the Emperor's New Clothes. When callers called in about weather modification, and I had a guest on about weather modification and the history of weather warfare, we said it could be, but probably isn't. But they are doing secret programs, so you never could say it. They're already manipulating the weather so much, who knows? And they had Senator Whitehouse come out just earlier this week and said, we don't want to help Oklahoma because you didn't help support carbon taxes. We're sick of paying for you. You know, your coal power plants caused this. So he's actually saying the victims did it. And they're like, absolutely. The Oklahomans, the Midwesterners, they're all bad. Literally, we played that clip earlier in the week. I'm going to play it tomorrow on the radio show. And then they shifted gears from there and said, no, Alex Jones is saying Obama and the government did it. And, of course, they edited all the audio. Media Matters, run by the White House, did not put out a video because it would have been clip, obvious. They put it out to make it sound like I was saying black helicopters did it. When I was explaining that high-altitude aircraft modify large weather fronts, and low-altitude aircraft, from people I've interviewed and the classified stuff, they can create tornadoes, but it's very hard to do. So I was getting into the science of weather modification and weather warfare from the father of weather weapons, Ben Livingston, who was doing weather modification from World War II up until today. He's 90-something years old. And they took an hour of information, boiled it down to a minute to lie to you. And the good news is, why are they attacking Infowars.com? Why are they attacking yours truly? Because we're effective. And you know why we're effective? Because we're real. I'm unpolished. There's no teleprompter here. I got my guests in here to talk about other issues, but then I remember, oh, yeah, this is a big national story now. I need to fire back and respond. But it's really a teaching thing. When no weapon used against us will prosper, as the Bible says. And the older I get, the more I realize the Bible, that's where it's at. All the knowledge right there. When you're trying to do right, doesn't mean I'm perfect, everything they do basically ends up bouncing back against them. And I've got a bunch of issues I want to talk about with Pastor Chuck Baldwin of chuckbaldwinlive.com while he's here, and talk about his 2 books, the newest one that's out that is such an important salvo of truth against the globalists. But just hearing me break that down and seeing some of the news articles and clips today, while you're here at the InfoWars studio, what do you make of their intensified desperateness against myself, Matt Drudge, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz? And, of course, they're attacking you some as well. I mean, there's not really that many of us, but we're effective, and it's scaring them. What do you make of what's happening? Because it's big medicine, as they say. In fact, I'm in the opposite of a power trip, Pastor. It kind of freaks me out to be getting this much attention, but it's so ham-fisted and so deceptive at the same time. I think it's going to backfire on them. What's happening right now?
It's great to meet you in person.
You bet. Great to meet you.
You've got a great staff, great studios, great operation. Thank you very much. I think it's typical. Anytime someone such as you, me, Ron, Rand, Ted Cruz, and anybody who will have the courage to speak the truth, what it does, it shames them for their dishonesty. And they hate that. So they will do everything in their power to discredit those who are telling the truth in order that they might have a monopoly of information to the American people. The problem is what you said is exactly right. Every time they do this, it backfires on them. And it draws more people to our message. The more they attack us, people will be out there, some people that don't know about you, don't know about me, they'll hear this and they'll go, well, what's this Chuck Baldwin guy? What's this Alex Jones guy all about? So then they'll check us out. They'll go to the internet, they go to the radio, whatever, they'll check us out, they'll listen, and they'll go, wow, this guy's telling the truth. Every time they do it, it just increases the amount of information that people receive from us. So,
well, Hardball and MSNBC last year did a documentary on the Tea Party, and I was heavily featured in Ron Paul, and they actually took a clip of him on my show out of context about the Founding Fathers and said that Ron Paul wants violence when everybody knows it's the opposite. Right. And it backfired because everybody knows Ron Paul. Exactly. And they knew that was just pure bull. But right. It's their nature, though. People seem to think that good people have no power and that evil is just in charge of everything. And yes, evil tends to get in charge because it's ruthless and wants the power. But can you talk historically and biblically, I mean, a little bit about the fact that there are different forces in this world? Mm-hmm. It's not just evil. We tend to just abdicate and just, oh, well, that's the way it is. It's the end of the world.
Right. Yeah, if that was the case, then the founders would have never done what they did. I think you can make a great case for the fact that they were never a majority, but they were a tireless minority who would not be satisfied with anything other than the prevalence of truth.
A very small minority.
Absolutely, and they prevailed. And the reason they prevailed is because they were able to, with the truth on their side, speak to the hearts of the American people. And that's the thing that these globalists fear more than anything. The reason they fear you, Alex Jones, the reason they fear Chuck Baldwin and Ron Paul and people such as us, is because we preach the truth. They cannot stand the truth. You put the truth in truth is like a light going on in a dark room and all the roaches are scurrying for the corners. They can't stand the truth. We're talking directly to the people. We are bypassing the mainstream media. They used to have a monopoly on the information that people heard. They don't have that monopoly anymore. The internet, the technology has evolved. You've got these studios, you've got your radio show, you got what you're doing right here on video. You're putting this stuff out 24 hours a day. They can't control that. So no longer do they have a monopoly on what the American people are
What are they going to do next then? I mean, I had Bloomberg on Bloomberg Business Week magazine. He's doing some feature piece. And I'm sitting there telling them things, and they're giggling and laughing. And I'm like, don't you get it? You are losing your credibility every day. I just want to have a free country. What do you, because I hope they keep being arrogant, but I think they're starting to lose some of that arrogance. How are they going to counter-strike against us? What keeps you up late at night? What do you wake up at 2 a.m. worried about, Chuck Baldwin?
I guess the only worry that I have, Alex, is that maybe I won't do what I'm supposed to do, and I won't be faithful to do what God's called me to do. I'm a great believer that there is a creator God who, as Benjamin Franklin said, governs in the affairs of men. And I don't really care how powerful the enemy might think that they are. You and I both know that there's a God in heaven who is the ultimate power of the universe. I have a responsibility to him. I want to make sure that I'm doing my job. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can do. That's my concern. My favorite quote is John Quincy Adams. Duty is ours. Results are God's. And
Justice be done, may the heavens fall.
I truly believe that. So, I think it's, actually I sit back and I'm kind of amused when I hear what these people are doing and what they're saying. Like, they're taking that clip of yours about the tornado, and they're trying to twist that. It's kind of humorous because it shows you how desperate they are. They're desperate to try to discredit someone that they know is reaching the American people.
Well, I used to joke around more on air because it's hard to be serious all the time, just 'cause and they'll take that and twist it. So I've got to just be. I mean, I've joked around before and you know, made a sarcastic statement, and then they'll put that out now, really abusing their audience. Because I make mistakes when I do. I like to come tell people so they know, hey, you know, I want you to know that, you know, I made a mistake here. But they just, they revel. You know, it's funny you mentioned that. Here's my next question for you, and then we're going to talk about the book. Guys, can you search engine Schmidt, head of Google, Schmidt says "Don't be evil" slogan was stupid. And I think it was a Sunday Times of London piece, came out a few days ago, but it was also in other places. But he was on TV over in Europe. There's even a video of it, but you can just pull it up so I can show people. He said, when I took, you know, when I was at Google near the beginning, I told him this "Don't be evil" was stupid. Yeah, there it is. Schmidt, "Don't be evil" was stupid. And he goes on to say, well, there really isn't any evil. He said, sure, the Bible says there isn't a book, but "Don't be evil's dumb" because there is no evil. Really, is somebody that grabs a 4-year-old girl out of the back of a backyard and takes her and rapes her for 2 months and tortures her, and is that evil? So what I've noticed is they always say there's no good and evil, but then when they want to take our rights, they tell us what morality is, or they say we're going to hurt somebody's feelings politically if we say that lifestyle is dangerous. So they are saying there's a morality, but it's their morality to tell us how to live. But if we ever say we have a view or we have an idea, now if people complain to the TSA, they have a talking point like, "I don't want you groping me." Okay, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist. So like if I said I wanted chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla and all they were serving was vanilla, they'd say that's a conspiracy. They're actually saying our free will is bad and that it doesn't exist, that we're just animals, just a programmable thing. But the truth is they know there's a free will. They want to get rid of it in programs. So that's my preaching. You now can look out there at the camera. Which one is on him? Right there? Yeah, absolutely. You know, for the next 20 minutes or so and get into free will, where the world's at, where it's all going, where you think it's going, and how you think we defeat it. The state of the world right now, not the State of the Union, the state of the world, the state of the spirit with Pastor Chuck Baldwin.
Wow, that's quite an introduction. Thanks, Alex. I think the battle that we are facing today is a battle that's been going on since the world began. And that is the battle between, will man be free to be governed by God, or will he be subdued and governed by tyrants? William Penn said if a man is not governed by God, he will be ruled by tyrants. And I think that is the ultimate battle that we are facing. It's got a modern face, new names, new context, but it's an age-old battle. It goes back to the Tower of Babel in the book of Genesis, when mankind, those who would be tyrants among us, decided that they would create a global government. Now we know what God thought of that because he supernaturally judged it and set forth the precedent for all of the world to see that there was only one sovereign, and that it wasn't God, it wasn't government, it wasn't the president, it wasn't the Supreme Court, it wasn't the CFR or any of these global organizations. The only sovereign is Jesus Christ. And of course, our founding fathers understood that. And they really truly believed that man must be free so that he might be governed by God. That was the whole philosophy behind the War of Independence. When that first started, of course, the Crown decided that they were going to subdue the colonists, and they did this through several mechanisms, not the least of which was the attempted confiscation of their firearms at Concord, Massachusetts. Now, a citizenry that is incapable of defending itself cannot be a free people. It is absolutely critically important that free people keep and bear arms. The founders knew this, which is why whenever the Crown sent their troops to Lexington, that Pastor Jonas Clark's male congregation at the Church of Lexington were the ones that stood on Lexington Green in the pre-dawn hours of April 19, 1775, with their muskets, and stood in front of the British troops, about 800 in number. The Minutemen numbered about 75. This took place right in front of the church house where those men worshiped every single Sunday. The British troops saw the men standing with muskets, immediately opened fire. 8 men died instantly, returned fire in self-defense. The shot fired heard around the world. The war for independence began. The rest is history. How did that happen? That could not have happened except that Pastor Jonas Clark and the other colonial pastors at that time preached and taught and explained the principles of liberty, the principles of freedom, natural law, revealed law to their congregations, so that whenever the tyrant was exposed as such, they knew where to draw their line. They understood the jurisdictional authority that God has given to all men. All men's authority is jurisdictional in nature. It's limited in scope. God is the only sovereign. He is the only one that has full kingship authority over our lives. So the battle has always been, will men be free to be governed by God, or will they submit to the tyrannical reign of those who would usurp the authority of God? Now, even non-Christians must have the freedom to either choose to worship God or not. And that is central to our understanding of freedom in this country. That's why we have this sacrosanct doctrine that we believe that all men are free in the matter of faith and religion. And there is no theocracy in America. We don't have a government saying that you will worship God this way, or you will go to this church, or you'll be baptized in this manner, or you'll take this catechism, or whatever. It goes back to the natural law of freedom that men have to be able to allow God to govern them according to their understanding of Holy Scripture, etc. Without that, you're reduced to tyranny. You're reduced to despotism. And I think that's the battle, Alex, that we're facing today.
God's trying to make you free so you can choose free will and develop as your own person. But the globalists, and throughout history, they're always trying to become God, act like God, take your free will to make you a slave. And then atheist people should get this. Even if you don't believe in God, saying that my rights come from God that are common sense, okay, now no government can be above me. But the truth is, I said you got the floor, but you're absolutely right. I just wanted to add this. Right there is the crux of it, because they're really going after everybody's free will, and they want the state to be God.
I think they see the state as God. I think they really do have a God complex. And you know, here's the thing. If you reject God individually, you're going to replace that with something. And a lot of these people that we're talking about, these globalist types, I think have rejected the authority of God in any shape, manner, or form. And as a result, they see themselves as God, or at least the combination of everything that they're able to accomplish as God. They're doing God's work because they're building a better planet. They're making life better for us. They're making life more secure for us. After all, we need their protection. We need their assistance. We need their sustenance.
But that's their mid-level minions. I studied at the top. They're at the top. What really makes you believe in God, and again, not even the way they twist it and things in the media, is that I've studied the globalists. You get to the final level of the New World Order, they're a bunch of Luciferians.
Oh, I don't doubt that a bit.
We'll break down the biggest threats and how we defeat them then, and talk about the book.
Yeah, well, for Christians, for those of us that know the Lord as our Savior, obviously we have to be able and willing to take our stand under Christ for those principles and those truths that we know to be right. We cannot abandon the field. We cannot run from the battle. We cannot pretend that this fight does not exist. We cannot pretend that we do not have a responsibility for the sake of our children and our grandchildren to resist that which we know to be evil and to promote that which we know to be right. That's the first thing. We have to accept personal responsibility for our duty. I love John Quincy Adams' quote, "Duty is ours, results are God's." And that's the truth. In every area of life, we only have one thing to do, and that's to do our duty. Let God take the results. But we have a duty, and we cannot abrogate or run from that responsibility. The thing that the books you referred to, my son Tim, who's a constitutional attorney, and I have written a couple of books that we think are just absolutely critical for this time in which we live. Romans 13, The True Meaning of Submission, is the first book that we wrote. So many pastors and Christians teach and are taught that we are supposed to obey the government no matter what. Unlimited submission.
Obey Stalin.
Anybody, whoever government is. That is so contrary to the teaching of Scripture. They use Romans 13 in the first 7 verses of Romans 13 to try and justify that. What we did in the book is we go into the entire Bible, Old and New Testament. We show the complete scriptural teaching on the subject of submission to human authority. What we find, of course, is that all human authority is limited. It's jurisdictional, as I said a minute ago. That there's only one sovereign, that's Christ.
And if a government goes against, just reading your book, but also common sense, natural law, if the government goes against the common law, the common sense, then it's null and void. I mean, if it says, give your children to the fires of Moloch, well, the Bible says, give not your children to the fires of Moloch.
Exactly.
It's saying, don't follow the government.
Exactly right. If you were to take out all of the examples of Scripture of God's people resisting evil government, you're going to take away a vast percentage of the entire Scripture. I mean, from the beginning, from Abraham all the way through the New Testament, from Moses who resisted and rejected the attempted murder of a Hebrew slave there in Egypt by a taskmaster. He stepped in and by force defended that man from harm, and was then praised in Hebrews chapter 11 for doing so, and became the great deliverer of God's people. All the way from Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all of the prophets who withstood the kings, pointed the finger into the king's face and said, you know, thus saith the Lord, to John the Baptist, who pointed the finger at Herod the king, to Simon Peter, who said we must obey God rather than men, to the Apostle Paul, the man who wrote Romans 13, who spent half of his life in jail because of violating some law.
And Christ could have knelt to the Pharisees, but he didn't. He whipped them.
Oh, absolutely. So Romans 13, The True Meaning of Submission, was our first book. The second book, the one we just came out with, To Keep or Not to Keep, Why Christians Should Not Give Up Their Guns.
And again, our viewers know a lot of this, but you need to read this to really have the facts. They're so well written, so historical, and then give them to pastors.
Right. This book on Second Amendment, this is not from the Constitution. This is not from the Second Amendment. This is not from a historical, philosophical, political point of view. This book is written expressly from a biblical point of view. It's for Christians mostly, to help them understand what the Bible teaches about the right to keep and bear arms.
Jesus said, break the law and carry the assault weapon of the day.
You're referring to what Jesus said in the book of Luke, right before the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Gethsemane. And as they were getting ready to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was going to be betrayed, arrested, and eventually crucified, he told the disciples, he commanded them, if you don't have one, sell your clothes and buy a sword. The disciples responded, there are 2 swords here. So 2 of the men were already carrying swords. One was Simon Peter. We know that because he's the one that cut off the guy's ear in the garden. The other was probably Matthew. Regardless, there were 2 swords already being carried. Now, what you're referring to is, in the Greek word there, the word for sword is the same word that is used in Romans chapter 13, where it says, he, speaking of the civil authority, government, bears not the sword in vain. It's the same word. He's referring to a military-type weapon. The Roman sword was the most efficient and effective self-defense tool in the world at that time. It would be the equivalent of a modern-day AR-15 type rifle for modern Americans. So Jesus instructed the disciples, A, go buy a military-type weapon. B, the military-type weapon that he told them to go buy was illegal for them to buy.
I've read the histories of Josephus. They a lot of times crucified you for having that sword.
They were a subjugated people, the Hebrews were. They were not allowed by the Roman government to carry a Roman sword.
That was for their safety, though.
Well, and we know what it was for.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
They had seized and conquered them.
Right.
Conquered people are disarmed.
Exactly right.
But it's for their safety.
But see, now the other thing about that is, in the garden itself, whenever they came for Christ, Simon Peter felt confident enough that he was doing the right thing to try and defend the life of Jesus by taking the life of a soldier that was coming to arrest him, that he drew his sword and tried to do so. The man ducked to cut off his ear. Jesus put the ear back on in a healing, told Simon Peter to put up his sword. He didn't tell him to give up his sword. And then he said, they that live by the sword die by the sword. And we go into all this in the book. That does not mean that anybody who defends life with a rifle or a handgun is violating the law of God.
It's clearing. If you go out and live by taking things with a sword,
exactly
you're
right.
going to end up getting it. Well, it's kind of they lie about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've studied this a lot. And of course, preachers are on record on it. But look, it says, "Thou shalt not murder,"
right,
which means go kill an innocent person. It doesn't say, "Thou shalt not kill."
The right of self-defense is a God-given responsibility and duty that God gave to mankind from creation. Let me give you an example from Genesis. When God first created man, he gave him a couple of, only a few commands at the very beginning. The first one was to procreate, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Bring forth life.
See, God's given us good stuff to do.
The only command, by the way, the only command in the Bible probably that man has ever broken is that first one. But then right after that was, he said, if a man shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Okay? So God tells us two things. He said, first of all, the responsibility to bring life into the world. And secondly, to protect life. So the duty and the responsibility of protecting life is sacred.
Well, it's very libertarian. It's saying, do not offensively for no reason go attack somebody, but if someone attacks you, defend yourself.
Exactly right. It is a duty. It is not just a right. I had a Christian write on my Facebook page here recently and said, I can't believe it, something very outlandish. He said that owning a firearm was a privilege granted by government. He claims to be a Christian. It was a privilege granted by government. And if government wanted to take it away, as a Christian, we have no right to say no. He doesn't understand that the right of self-defense is more than a right. It is a duty. It is an obligation.
Well, what's happening is so many of these people never went through adversity, never got mugged, and they're just literally, like in England where the extremist cuts off the guy's head, and everybody for 20 minutes for the cops because they're standing around talking to him. I mean, I would at least be getting away from a guy who's out there, with a meat cleaver cutting heads off, much less like, oh, I mean, they don't even get threats.
I think it's even deeper.
I read about women who get grabbed, and they don't even fight back, or they like get in the van, and I would fight for everything to not get in the van.
Yeah, but I think in our discussion point here, Alex, I think the problem is so many Christians for so long, for at least 50 years, maybe longer than that, have been indoctrinated in this philosophy of pacifism, this philosophy of unlimited submission. I mean, the pastors just beat it into them and beat it into them.
But it's okay for the military to go around doing all this.
Exactly. It's okay. In fact, they're the biggest cheerleaders for war, are the evangelical Christians.
Send your sons out in immoral wars to kill people.
It's okay to kill as long as you're in uniform.
Yeah.
But if you're an individual defending yourself, your family, someone else.
That's what Piers Morgan said. Buzz Bissinger said, let's kill Alex Jones. And then the woman.
Yeah, I heard that.
And then they all said, in a uniform, and they fetishize the power of the state. Very sick.
This is
because they literally hate the individual.
Right.
I mean, I would feel embarrassed if I had power or something because I was part of some large mafia. I mean, I do feel satisfaction in being successful individually. I just don't get it. I mean, what is it in my spirit from my entire life that wants to see people empowered and that also hates bullies? Because I don't get how people don't have the animating contest of liberty. How it, like Ezekiel or who was the prophet who said, it's burning in my bones, they're going to kill me?
Jeremiah.
It was Jeremiah. They're going to kill me, but I can't shut up.
Right.
And people say, Alex, will you ever sell out? That's what people say I've sold out and make stuff up, that I'm CIA or this or that. I couldn't sell out. They could put a gun to my head and say, hurt some child or do something evil, and it's not that I'm a hero. I can't do it. I feel guilty that I don't work hard enough and that my flesh is weak and that I don't fight them strong enough. It's funny, I asked you, what do you fear? You said, I wake up worrying I'm not doing enough and I'm not pure enough, and that's my fear. Yeah. Like, I'm not worried about getting killed. Out of fear, I'm worried I won't get more perfected. I won't get a good report.
Yeah, I think that you, first of all, just thank God that you are as you are. Because we are all dependent upon God. I mean, delight thyself in the Lord, he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. So thank God you have the desire in your heart to do what it is you're doing. I mean, I look at people and say, how can you not fight? How can you not resist? How can you not take a stand? I look at my pastor brothers, the ones who are up there preaching this social gospel, preaching all this pansy-wansy stuff where that, you know, nobody takes a stand, don't say anything controversial. And I say to myself, you're a watchman. God has given you a position of trust and responsibility and influence where that your voice affects so many people. And going back to your other question, I think the problem is so many pastors have numbed the congregations that they don't have that burden of defense and liberty and life. They've, you know, all this is in the book. The same law that allows us to defend ourselves individually as a society also is the same law that should protect unborn children. Think about this. You got a lot of pro-life people out there that march for life, and they contribute to pro-life organizations, and they're involved in trying to overturn abortion on demand, and they cry out for the unborn, and rightly so.
And we're winning that battle.
And I'm right there.
Every time we fight, we win.
But here's the thing. Here's my comparison. If you and I don't have the right to defend ourselves as grown adults, if we don't have the right to fight for life, if we don't have the right to fight for the lives that we have, then what right do we have to fight for the lives of the unborn? That's
a point I never thought about. That is genius. Because imagine if I'm in a parking lot and a guy pulls out a sigh, the grim, because that's what they use on a baby, and is trying to hack me up. Do they say I don't have a right to fight?
Right.
Because they're going to try to fight for the unborn.
Right.
And
so the government has the right to come and kill us and subject us to all kinds of tyranny and murder and mayhem, etc.
The state says kill babies.
The state says do it, so it's okay. So why do we?
So they should do Romans 13.
That's right.
They should
13.
kill. You know what?
Right.
You know,
Romans 13. They should let the babies die. Romans 13. They should let the government kill the babies. Why do they support the right to life groups? Why do they get involved in pro-life organizations? Why do they give money? Why do they beseech the?
Yeah, just say it's the end of the world. Let them die.
Well, no, it's God's will because the state so ordered it. So it's God's will.
Let me ask you this question. Wow, that's powerful. Wow, I've never even. That is a powerful angle. The truth resonates when you know truth when you hear it. I mean, then expanding on that, when they say that it's okay to kill babies. Now the Journal of Bioethics, as you know, a year ago came out and said, well, let's kill kids up to age 3, even healthy ones. Right. And I put that out, just like the Mayak report saying you were basically a terrorist and Ron Paul was. For a few days, Ron Paul was like, really, Alex? Really? Until the feds admitted it. Yeah. I mean, you believed me when I called you. Remember I called you? And I said, hey, they're saying you're a terrorist.
Yeah,
you're like, really? Send that to me.
Yeah, exactly.
But Ron Paul was like, I got him on the...
You broke the story.
Well, the point is, even Ron Paul was like, Alex, really? So I got to hold him on. He's like, really? I said, yeah, you need to get me, Ron Paul. I have to call his assistant. This is real. Got it to him. He was in Lake Charles at the time. And then he got it. He made calls they wouldn't. And then like 4 days later, they said it was real. Everybody's like, oh, we apologize. It was real. But
we sent a letter. We sent a letter, and we signed it and sent it off to the officials in Missouri and demanding an apology. And that's whenever, and of course, millions. After you put it on your show, I wrote a column on it, and my syndicated column, it went viral. And the people in Missouri, they were inundated with hundreds of thousands.
Exactly. But the reason I tell that story is Paul Watson's official journal of bioethics, it says this. It took people a week to think we hadn't run a hoax when there was a link to them. There was a link to them. People, that's what I'm saying is it's so over the top that people are in denial. It's like that abortion doctor that just got...
Yeah.
Gosnell, that's an oxymoron, doctor killing babies. These are babies that there's waiting lines to adopt them. They're 9 months old. He's killing them. He's making jokes about them. It's the place is filthy. Women are dying in the clinic. And people are upset about that when it's just so obvious it is children.
And the duty that we have to protect life.
No, Romans 13, the government says it's good.
See, that's the thing, and that's where people aren't thinking. They're not.
Isn't it just the ultimate cop-out of incredibly lazy people, preachers and their flock, who just don't want to be challenged? When it was the preachers that helped end slavery, it was the preachers that helped. I mean, it's always been the real preachers that help drive towards that. I think if they get before Christ, God's going to say, you said you know me, but I don't know you.
What motivates people? Is it fear? Is it? I think there's. I mean, I grew up in the fundamental evangelical Christian church. I mean, I was with moral majority. Jerry Falwell was my mentor. I've been to all the big meetings. Most of these guys that we know publicly, I've been with, have spoken with, been on the same platform with. I've been there my whole life.
And you said, knowing them, they grew up in the 30s and 40s. They were really just naive.
I really think it went back to a statement that one of those men made back in the early 1980s, back when the Christian Coalition and Moral Majority were just getting started. And what he said was, and I was there when he said it in Washington, D.C., he made the statement, all we want is a seat at the table, meaning the king's table. And they got it. They got it.
And now they get tax funds.
And now that they've been there, they will do anything and everything to keep their seat at the table. And I hate to cut it to that much.
But that's a seat at a puppet table to begin with.
Well, when you do that, you have sold your independence, and you have abandoned your calling, in my view. As a pastor, Alex.
Well, now they're out calling for guns to be turned in.
Yeah, I know they are. I've, as a pastor, my responsibility is to preach the truth, the best I can understand it, without fear, without favor. That's my duty. That's my calling. If I allow a government institution or a faith-based initiative bribe or an invitation to a White House or a governor's mansion dinner or whatever the perk might be to negate that calling where I am supposed to declare the truth, am I really God's man anymore? Am I really the watchman? Am I really the shepherd anymore? Or have I become a hireling? I preached a message not too long ago on the difference between a shepherd and a hireling. And Jesus said the shepherd gives his life for the sheep. He's willing to fight the lion and the bear. What does the hireling do? He runs from the bear and the lion. He's not willing to give his life. Why? Because he's a hireling. He's not really a shepherd.
He's not committed.
He's not really a shepherd.
He's not even on a team.
I think the people out there that have these pastors, and it took me a long time to say this, and this may sound short, but the Christians out there who go to these churches and their pastors will not take a stand, will not tell the truth. They will not engage the enemy. Or they will, as you said, pastors get up and expect their people to turn in their guns if the government asks them to do so, the clergy response teams, and all these things. Or they go along with it. I really think it's time that Christians start voting with their feet and leaving these churches and finding some pastors that will take a stand and support them. I mean, if you want a pastor to take a stand, then you support the pastor that's taking a stand.
Yeah, I have family that have been going to a church for about 10 years or longer, and they've taken the old preacher out. It's a big church, brought in new ones, and it's like Bill and Melinda Gates, New World Order. And one family member left it and will not go. And the other teaches Sunday school and goes, well, at least I can get down here and give them, they haven't gotten down to me yet. And that's kind of a quandary, does the one family member sit there and still give good teaching to the little kids? Or because the church at the top is, it is like total New World Order. Right. What would you do in that?
I would leave the church. I would leave the church unequivocally, and I would find a pastor that will preach the truth, and I will help him in that church. And I will teach Sunday school to those children, and I will help that congregation, and I will encourage that pastor. There's a lot of pastors out there. I've got a Black Regiment list on Black Regiment. That's the pastor.
Explain that to people.
Okay, in the War for Independence, the British Crown concocted the title or the moniker, the Black Regiment. It's referring to the colonial pastors that were preaching independence
And it had
freedom.
a double meaning. Anything black meant bad and accursed.
Well, it meant the black robes.
No, but it had the double meaning too.
Yeah. The black robes they wore in the pulpit, and so they called them the Black Robed Regiment or the Black Regiment. But these were the preachers, like Jonas Clark, who stood up in the pulpit and taught the principles of liberty that motivated and inspired the people to fight for freedom and independence. But so a few years ago, back in 2007, I was studying history, and I came across that again, and I thought, wow, we need to resurrect that today. So we put out an appeal through my website, through my column.
Great idea.
Yeah, and we've got over 700 pastors on our Black Regiment list right now. They go to chuckbaldwinlive.com.
So if people are looking for a good preacher in their area,
There could be
you
one.
got 700.
There's 700 there. That
Man, I've gone to so many churches where I can tell the people are loving and good and have a good message, but then you can tell because they don't even like it when they give the government message because they've been, you know, and I mean, it's like, ooh. It's,
so if you find one, if you got a pastor like that near you, okay, maybe his church isn't as big. Maybe it's not as ornate. Maybe it doesn't have all the trappings, you know, but if he's putting out the truth, then get in there and help him and go shoulder to shoulder with him and stand with him. I mean, he needs help. He needs Sunday school teachers. He needs deacons. He needs elders. He needs officers in the church. He needs workers. He needs children's workers, teen workers. He needs people to help him. So if the people that believe the truth would support the men of God that are preaching the truth, how much more effective could we be? Plus, it would put on notice all of these guys out there that are unwilling to preach the truth. Look, the people want the truth, and they're not going to sit and tolerate it if you don't get it.
And again, people, because of Hollywood, Schwarzenegger, you know, the archetype of the, you know, superhero that goes out, the Hercules that defeats the Hydra. In truth, defeat of tyranny is little steps, and it's little people, many hands make light work. I want people to know, they're like, well, how do I start? Or they always try to have some grand plan, or they want me to help them start something. Just start small, do the right thing, you know, duty is ours, consequences.
God's.
Absolutely. I mean, it comes down to that. Just do the right thing, the world will change.
Exactly right. And none of us can do it all, but everybody can do something. And
all right, closing comments. People should get both the books at InfoWarsStore.com. Support you, support me. But I mean, you know, books don't even really support us. The point is, this info are weapons of truth to destroy mountains of lies. And a grain of truth can destroy a mountain of lies. Go to InfoWarsStore.com. Get the book, Romans 13. Get the book to keep or not to keep. Get both these books with his constitutional lawyer's son, written with Pastor Chuck Baldwin. Give him today. 2-minute closing comment right there, whatever's on your heart right now.
Well, first of all, Alex, thank you for what you're doing. And those of you that are watching Alex, you need to support him if you're not already. It's like supporting a pastor that's going to preach the truth. You need to support the guys in the media that are going to tell the truth. You need to support the people in government that are telling the truth. Support the people in business that are telling the truth. We got a list of businessmen on my website at chuckbaldwinlive.com. We call them patriot businesses, and we've got several of them that you can support if you live in that area. So you need to support Alex Jones. And the books, yes, will help the support of Alex and the show, but more than that, it will give the information and the truth that is needed to combat all of these lies that have been going on for the last 50 years or more. The Romans 13 book, what the Bible teaches about true submission to authority. The new book, To Keep or Not to Keep, Why Christians Should Not Give Up Their Guns. I believe this book, and I really mean this with all of my heart, Alex, I believe this book, if it could get into enough churches and pastors, homes and hearts, it could change the course of the country. Why? Because the churches have the power to change the course of the country. They always have had, they always will have. This book can revolutionize the thinking and the philosophy of pastors and Christians all over America. It will help them to understand the biblical principles of freedom. It'll help them understand the biblical principles of liberty. They will know the jurisdictional authority given by God. They will understand what is and what is not tyranny. They will understand what is right and what is wrong when it comes to resistance. I've had so many Christians that have come to me privately before we wrote the book, and they said, you know, Chuck, I know you're right about the Second Amendment. I know you're right about keeping and bearing arms, but where does the Bible say that? I've never heard my pastor say anything about it. I've never been taught this. Where do I find this in the Bible? Show me. This book shows you in the Bible where that's found, from Old and New Testaments. Hundreds and hundreds of scriptural references in that book. you will have the scriptural tools at your disposal, at your fingertips, that you'll be able to talk with anybody, anywhere, anytime, intelligently about what the Bible says about the right of self-defense. So I encourage all of you to get the book, support Alex, support the other patriots that you know are out there in whatever field that they're in. And if we work together, I believe with all of my heart that we can see victory in this country. Alex, I don't believe that God is finished with liberty in America today. I don't believe.
No, our metal's going to be tested. We're living on the work of others that fought for freedom before us. Pastor, we're going to end the show right now, and I'll get you back to your hotel and fly you back to Montana, in the morning. But just stay right there. I'm going to end the show. God bless you. It's great to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you, Alex. Thanks very much.
You know, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't watch many preachers online because it's so watered down. And I don't say that in some arrogant way. It's just true. But we watch almost greedily by Monday or so when it gets on YouTube. I didn't even know till I talked to him that it's streamed every Sunday, 2:30 live at chuckbaldwinlive.com. Maybe that's something we should start getting on prisonplanet.tv for the folks. You know, pick up your feed and put it out that way or archive it. The point is that it's good to have somebody you can learn something from, and I learn a lot from Chuck Baldwin. And I've encouraged him to start, but he needs the support to do it. And he said he's actually thought about that, obviously, a seminary. And you never know people you touch and things you do. You may give this book to a young person who's going to go to Bible college or seminary. You may give this information or pass this video on to someone who's a pastor, a priest, whatever it is, a rabbi, whatever, to get them thinking about the real animating contest for liberty. I mean, there were people like Howard Phillips, who just passed, who Pastor Baldwin had a eulogy of, who now, I didn't even know who he was until about 16, 17 years ago. But later I learned that was somebody who did things that led to things that happened that woke me up. Yeah. And so you never know, like ripples in a pond, who you're affecting, who you're getting to. Let's say you got 10 copies of this book and gave them to preachers in your area randomly. I'll guarantee you, one or two of those preachers are going to wake up because of this book. And that's someone who's going to reach hundreds, if not thousands. It might be some small preacher who's reaching 100 people a week right now. But I'm telling you, the way God works, as Martin Luther King said, the universe bends towards justice. And that's just the way it works. God smiles on the righteous. And the biggest thing the world will do is, tell you you're evil. Good people are so guilty about the bad things they do that they'll never be a leader, and then they'll let the totally wicked run everything. Look, none of us are perfect. Just get out there, start doing something. Pray to God to help lead God and direct you against these people, and nothing will happen but doors opening. Every time I've not submitted to tyranny and not compromised for worldly gain, doors have just flung open. Every time I've passed thresholds of fear and threats and just trusted in God, I take the step, God has taken me the rest of the way. And I'm telling you, this is the great challenge. The mark of the beast, the new world order, genetic engineering, nuclear war. You know it's all written, and it's all coming to pass. We're on a planet. It's going to go up to 10 billion people. It's going to be hell on earth in many areas. But through that great crisis, we will awaken billions of people. And then the real, true age of human liberty will begin under God. And that's why the globalists call it the new age, because they create the counterfeit, ladies and gentlemen. Everything the devil offers you is a lie and a fraud, a cheap copy of what the creator of the universe is offering all of us. And again, it's time to break your conditioning. It's time to break the slavery of the New World Order. It's time to wake up and get involved and take action, because this is the great animating contest for liberty. This is what you were born for. This planet, all of it, is only a spiritual test for you and the rest of eternity. And again, the enemy tells you all day that's not true and that they're atheist. That is a lie. They serve the God of this world. They sold out for temporal power on this planet. This planet is very small. And that's why they're so scared of this information. That's why they don't want us to talk about it, because it's like nails on a chalkboard, because they know they got conned. They know that they sold out to the God of this world. They know they sold out to the little g God. They know they've been conned, and they're doubling down and committing, thinking if they can kill unborn children and other innocents and kill leaders and kill people of God, that they're going to win. But I don't fear he who can kill the body. I fear he who can kill the soul, But evil people kill themselves spiritually. They decide to go on the losing team, and God simply damns them, cuts them off. I'm doing a little bit of preaching here at the end. But ladies, the media calls me the preacher. You know what? I'm just somebody that loves liberty, ladies and gentlemen. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Great job to the crew. I salute the entire crew. We'll be back tomorrow, Lord willing, 11 a.m. Central for the radio show, and back tomorrow night with InfoWars Nightly News. Again, we want to thank the entire crew and all of you, the viewers and supporters of this transmission. And if you are watching this transmission, you are the resistance.